Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Millman. Thank you for watching. The former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, once said that he believed that what elevates us in life is not what we receive, but what we give. The more of ourselves we give, the greater we become. And one of my favorite personal development motivational speakers, Zig Ziglar, once said that when you give a man a dole, you deny him his dignity. And when you deny him his dignity, you rob him of his destiny. In this case, a dole means a handout, something that you receive typically from the government as a handout for people that are needy. I'll repeat it to you again because it's so impactful. When you give a man a dole, something that as a handout that he needs, that he's dependent upon, you deny him of his dignity. And when you deny him of his dignity, you rob him of his destiny. So in this week in the synagogue, we read a section of the Bible that from the book of Exodus called Teruma. And it deals with, this is the beginning of the construction of the Tabernacle, which would be a structure that the Jewish people would offer sacrifices in until the eventual construction of the more permanent structure, which became the Temple of Solomon hundreds of years later. And what Rabbi Sacks points out, that there's something very interesting about this, and I'd like to share this wisdom with you. So he says, first of all, it's very, very unusual because the construction of the tabernacle takes 5 weeks. There's different sections that we read in the Bible. The first one, this week being Teruma, in the book of Exodus. We read a section every week for the next 5 weeks, and it all has to deal with the construction of this tabernacle, which is a temporary structure. And in comparison, the construction of the entire universe that's described in the book of Genesis occurs in a mere 34 verses. So you can create the whole entire universe, everything in it within 34 verses, and that's a permanent creation. And then, but then for the construction of the tabernacle, which is a temporary dwelling that we don't use anymore, that takes about approximately 15 times the number of verses to describe its construction. And it's stuck in the book of Exodus, which is kind of interesting because that has to deal with the Jewish people, the tribes going down to the land of Egypt and eventually becoming slaves, and then they're liberated, and Moses leads them into the desert, and they receive commandments, and they witness miracles. So it has to do with the nation going into slavery and then becoming liberated, becoming a free nation, and becoming subservient to the Almighty, and living by commandments, and then on their way to the Promised Land. So this, to stick it in this section, seems to be somewhat misplaced. So we read for weeks and weeks and weeks about the construction of this tabernacle, and then we don't even have the tabernacle anymore. So Rabbi Sacks said that this is actually a very, very interesting idea. And he says that when Moses first confronts the Pharaoh and asks them to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, there he's denied, and then the labor gets even more severe for the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are angry at Pharaoh for, he says, and they rebuke Moses for confronting the Pharaoh and then not getting what Moses had promised. Then eventually they witness all of these miracles that befall the nation of Egypt, and eventually the Jewish people are freed. Moses leads them out of the desert, and they get to the Sea of Reeds. And before they cross the Sea of Reeds, the Egyptian army is coming, and it looks like they're going to be killed. And they respond and they say to Moses, "Were there not enough graves in Egypt? Why did you have to bring us out of the desert, out of bondage into supposed freedom, only to die in the desert because of the Pharaoh's army?" And then the sea crosses, the story says, and they cross the sea. And then 3 days later, they complain again. There isn't any water, but there is water, but the water is not the right flavor for them. So they complain about that. And then they start to complain about the food. They said, in Egypt, we used to sit around pots of meat, and we had this food, and here we are going to die of starvation in the desert. And then eventually they see the miracle of the giving of the Torah. It's called at Mount Sinai, something that is unique in history. You have a national revelation by the Almighty to an entire nation of people, not one person, but to an entire nation of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people. They witness this, and then within 40 days later, now they build a golden calf. So it seems like it doesn't matter how many miracles they see, it's not enough. They're not brought together as a cohesive nation. They're just a bunch of, not a bunch of, but they're individuals without a specific identity and a specific sense of responsibility. And Rabbi Sacks says this may have to do with the fact that they're just recently taken out of slavery, and when you're dependent on other people for everything, this is something that can develop a sense of not a sense of entitlement, but a sense that you always have to be a recipient of something. And when you're always receiving something, then you complain about the person or the institution or the institutions that are supposed to be providing it to you. So they complained to Moses, also called Moshe, about the water. They complained about the food. They complained about the travel. They complained about everything because they are constantly receiving. So in a sense, they're almost like a child which is dependent on their parents for everything. And Rabbi Sacks says what enabled them to eventually come together as a cohesive unit, as a nation. It's a free nation, but now living as a one group of people, as a unified group, is when the Almighty commands Moses to collect from all of the people money to contribute to make a tabernacle. Once they're told that they have to start contributing, once they have to start giving, then they become a cohesive group of people. And then we're told that there is no fighting. There's no fighting with Moses. There's no fighting amongst each other, because now they have a purpose, and they're no longer the recipients. Now they are the givers. They are the donators. It even says that they donated so much Moses had to tell them to stop. And when they would donate for the purpose of creating this temporary structure that the Almighty was said to dwell in, then they got along. Because now they were not the recipients. Now they were not receivers. Now they were givers. Now they were contributors. We're taught that when people are constantly receiving, they lose their dignity. And one of the famous Jewish philosophers and theologians from millennia ago, Maimonides, also called the Rambam, says that even poor people, when they are recipients of charity, often called tzedakah, which doesn't exactly mean charity, but it's translated often as charity. When they receive that to take care of their physical needs, they're also obligated to give something. Now, how could that possibly be? If you need to ask for handouts, if you need to ask for assistance from other people, how is it that you should also be commanded and be obligated to give? And the reason is because it gives you back your dignity. If you're always receiving, then you can lose your dignity. So you take care of your physical needs from the contributions of other people, but then you have to give to other people because it returns your dignity. If you're only receiving, you lose your dignity. And that Zig Ziglar quote, again, it says, when you give a man a dole, you deny him his dignity, and when you deny him his dignity, you rob him of his destiny. The Rabbi Sacks says that we should also translate this word in Hebrew, that this section of the Bible that we read as teruma. It's normally translated as offering or contribution. He said, so he says literally, it should literally be translated as meaning to something that we lift, something that we lift. So it's not just to contribute, but something that you give that lifts something up. And he says that when we give to other people, it lifts them up, but it not only lifts them up, it also lifts us up. If you needed to climb up a mountain and I had to help you climb up the mountain and I helped you up the mountain in order for you to get up the mountain, I would also go up the mountain as well. If you need help across a river and you hop on my horse and I take you across the river, I'm going across the river and you're going across. By me helping you get across, I'm also getting across. It elevates you, but it also elevates me. So in the sense that in this week's section of the Bible, the contribution to build this temporary structure did more than all of these miracles did to bring the people together as a free nation and to bring them together to be as a free nation and to bring dignity upon themselves by the process of giving to other people. So we read about how the miracles, all of these things that the Jewish people saw, the plagues that afflicted Egypt, the crossing of the Red Sea, food and water provided for free, the revelation on Mount Sinai. None of these things were enough to bring the people, this free nation, together to make the right decisions. They complained and complained and complained because they were always the recipients. When they changed from being recipients to givers and to contributors, that's when they exercised their true freedom. They become truly a free people and take on the characteristic of dignity, not by being receivers, but by being givers and contributors. Thank you. Rabbi Sacks says, it is not what is done for us that makes us free. It is what we do for others. Thank you very much for watching.